Story 1. I have a complicated relationship with my first name because altering one letter in my name turns it into an insult. This is what happened to me throughout my childhood. Story 2. My name is Native American Lakota and the name of an ancestor. I did not like having a non-standard American name when I was a child. I did not grow up on my reservation. Also, it is not phonetic in English, so I have to explain the pronunciation often. As an adult, I like having a unique name, and I appreciate the connection to my culture and my family. Story 3. I do not like my legal name but love my nickname. I thought about changing my name when I got married and changed my last name, but I did not. I really should have. Story 4. My given name depends on the year and region. It is either the third or fourth most common, so I hear it a lot and it is attached to many well-known people. Stewart, Dean, Jones, Cagney, Spader, Kahn, Garner, McCartney, Dio, Hetfield, and others. The name I use is the most common shortened version of that given name, and I like it. It suits me. It is easy to say, easy to spell, and with just one syllable it is efficient. Well, my name is Jim, but most people call me Jim. Story 5. I don't hate mine, but I have spent my whole life repeating, explaining, and spelling it. It is so bad that I just use a fake, boring name when I am ordering food or similar situations. Story 6. It is not my favorite, but it is unique and not many people have it. I cannot picture myself with another name, so win for my parents. Story 7. I like it. My last name comes before my first name because it would sound strange to say it otherwise. I sometimes receive calls from people looking for someone with my last name. I always tell them they have the wrong number. Story 8. My name feels a little too typical for me, and my parents don't even remember why they chose it. I can only speculate, and I think it is because there was only one Hollywood actor with that name at the time I was conceived. Story 9. I used to hate it because as a child it was so different from everyone else my age. But now I am older, I love it. It is who I am. Story 10. It is a very basic name. I do not like it because it is so common that I do not know if someone is talking to me or another person with the same name. Story 11. I hate it. It is just a knockoff spelling of a popular biblical name and does not mean anything. I always have to spell my name and pronounce it for people. I am going to change it when I turn 18, hopefully. Story 12. I have a very common Japanese name. I live in Australia, and I am half Japanese, so few people can spell my name correctly. Story 13. I love my first name, but I go by a nickname because telling people how to say my name correctly is annoying. Story 14. Hate it. It is literally a mouthful, and by the time I finish changing the shape of my mouth, I am simply done and rarely make it to the end. I do not even like responding to it when I hear my first name. I like my various online names a billion times better. Story 15. My mother's best friend named me after the lead character from her favorite movie. It means something along the lines of loving the dark. I hate the dark and much prefer the lighter times. I was scared of the dark when I was a child. Story 16. For my first name, it is unique, reasonably gender-neutral, and easily recognizable. However, it is not me anymore. I would say I like it, but I do not love it. I have two other first names. Both are slightly masculine, but I prefer having a name that plays with either of them. Story 17. My name felt really strange to me growing up. It seemed like an adult name long before I was ever an adult, and I only ever met two others with the same name. I have grown into it now, but school was tough. Story 18. For some reason, my colleagues and friends always misspell it or change it to something more common. Because of this, I constantly have to correct them, and it is really annoying and frustrating. Story 19. I never used it until I went to live abroad. Now I only use my first name, and only my wife calls me by my second name. Story 20. We are all named after the number one song of the month or day we were born. However, my sister is named after a band. My song was number one the week I was born on Casey Kasem's Countdown. I love it because that song describes me perfectly. Story 21. Sometimes I hate it and sometimes I like it. No one ever pronounces my name right, and I have never met anyone with the same spelling. My mom told me that the nurse wrote my name down, misspelled it, and added an extra S. She said she named me after the actor who played Richie Valens' brother in La Bamba. Story 22, James. I don't like it much. It has 1.5 syllables and does not roll off the tongue smoothly. I prefer jam. Story 23. Lots of disagreements with adults growing up, and even now, people insist. My real name is Kimberly as I am female, but no, just Kim. Legally Kim, and at 68, still having this conversation. Maybe my dad's choice would have been better. April, May. Story 24. Haley etymology means hay meadow. Victoria means victorious. And my last name means Moorish, dark, and swarthy. My first names actually sound much better with my boyfriend's last name Salter. So the victorious hay meadow is growing on me as I get older. There was a girl here a while back who was lamenting how her parents kept mistreating her. Her name meant donkey. You may want to remember this one for a rainy day. Story 25. I hate it. I was born Bear. Everybody says, "Oh my gosh, are you Bear Grylls' son?" And "Oh my gosh, were you named after Cheryl Cole's son?" The fact that I am 32 and Cheryl's son is about 3 years old, and they are completely serious, is unbelievable. Story 26. I have never gone by my first name. I have always used my middle name or my last name. I use my first name only in very formal settings. If someone calls me by my first name, I immediately know that they do not know me. At the same time, I have always loved my full name. It has a nice symmetry and ring to it. I have no affection for my first name on its own, but I would never change it because of the full name. Story 27. Neutral. The only point of dissent I have is how common it is. I remember being annoyed growing up when teachers called out first names only, and we would be like, "Which one? There are 5 of us in this room alone." I quietly learned to tune out my own name because I knew 99% of the time whoever was calling was not asking for me. That was not entirely my mother's fault. She was unknowingly ahead of the curve. The name increased in popularity shortly after my birth. At least my spelling is the less popular one. Story 28. I hated it as a child because I am named after Mariah Carey. In 6th grade particularly, kids would always sing "Touch My Body" at me. As an adult, I do not mind it. My name was almost Felicia. Story 29. I don't hate it. It is a decent name, but it does not feel like it belongs to me. It is such a common name. I know at least 20 other people with the same name in every age group. When someone says my name, I do not even react because it is more likely that someone else nearby is meant. I am using nicknames now. My friends and family all call me by different nicknames, and I love it. Those finally feel like me. Story 30. I was born during a Green Bay Packers game. My dad flipped the baby book open to the first name, said "good enough," and resumed watching the game. Story 31. I used to hate my first name. I always wanted something more unique or even unisex. Then I dated someone who said my name was their favorite name ever and that they hoped to name their daughter my name one day. From that day onwards, I learned to be okay with my name, and now I actually like it. My surname, though, I would love to change that. Story 32. When I was little, I did not like it because it sounded so formal. Plus, it was 10 letters to deal with when learning how to print and write cursive. As an adult, I have gone by my full name but use my nickname. I was named after my mother's lifelong friend, and I like it. I have only met 2 other people with my name. Story 33. Well, its meaning is very appropriate. I'm glad my parents chose it instead of the other options they considered. Story 34. My name translates to special. I recently found out I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder bordering on autism. I truly was a special child. Story 35. I hate it and have always hated it. It makes me cringe to hear it. I go by a shorter version, and I hate it a little less. Story 36. I never really liked it, and my mom said Dad named me after an ex-girlfriend. Whoever typed my birth certificate made a typo, so it is spelled wrong, and my parents never bothered to correct it. Every time I was sick from school, I would get called to the office because Mom would spell it without the extra letter on my excuse, and they would accuse me of cutting school. I wish I had shortened it to Nan or something when I was younger. Story 37. It is the same as my dad's. so I have been called the nickname version of it my whole life. Then South Park created a character with the same name who only said his name like a Pokemon, so I have had to live with that. Story 38. Hate the living hell out of it. In every data system, my name starts with S instead of S. The S version basically means sucking. God, I hate it badly. Story 39. It was a common name when I was born, but it is an old-fashioned name now. I do not mind, but it is annoying that my name is no longer on gas station keychains. Story 40. It is fine on its own, but combined with my middle name and the fact that I look like I was born after 1987, I get a lot of comments saying, "Your parents must have been big Full House fans." Story 41. I dislike my name. It is unisex, and no one can seem to spell it correctly. They add an I all the time, which makes it the more masculine Spanish version. Even at work, where my email address has the correct spelling of my full name, people still spell it wrong. Additionally, I find it very boring. Story 42. I like it, Jamie. However, I no longer correct people who write it incorrectly. About 8% of people get it right the first time in my country. Story 43. I used to hate it because I thought it sounded weird. No one would remember it, spell it correctly, or pronounce it correctly. But now I don't mind it that much. When researching, I found my name means gift, and I was an unplanned baby in my family. My mom says that I am her gift and she would go crazy in this house without me. Plus, my girlfriend thinks my name is beautiful. Story 44. I don't love it. My name starts with a consonant and then almost a schwa before the next syllable, which is stressed, so I always feel like I'm swallowing the first syllable when I say it. But whatever, I'm in my 40s and I don't dislike it enough to change. I mostly just use a shortened form. Story 45. I was given my first name with the sole purpose of being called a nickname, which I like anyway. The only problem is lately, older people insist on using my full name because they say it is much prettier. Story 46. I like my name in my native language, but not how it is pronounced in America. I just go by my middle name, which sounds more American and is easier to pronounce. I used to dislike it growing up, but now I like it. Story 47. I do not use it. My company uses my preferred middle name, but our biggest contract has me by my first name. Confusion ensues. Story 48. Having a biblical name is great because most languages have their own version of it, so people use it as they know it. Story 49. I did not like it. I liked the name, but it did not feel like me, so I changed it to the original name I was going to use before a last-minute change. I will not be sharing my names. Story 50. Don't care for it. I've been told quite a few times that my name is too basic for who I am. I think that's a compliment. Anyway, most people call me Ginger or Red, which I respond to more than my birth name at this point. Story 51. I'm tired of being called Chelsea instead of Kelsey. I also dislike my name because of the thoughtless way my birth giver came up with it. However, I love it and will never change it because of how my dad bonded with me before I was born with it. Story 52. I have always gone by Christopher, but the older I get, the more I like the way Christopher sounds, especially when combined with my middle name. Christopher James just has a nice ring to it. Of course, I am biased. It is my name after all. Story 53. I am okay with my first name. I use it in a professional setting, but I prefer my nickname, and it is what I refer to myself as in my mind. Story 54. My name is commonly used as a nickname. When I was growing up, many children used it. I was always one of 2 or 3 in my classes. However, now I find it unique that not many people have this name as their official name. I have only met 2. Also, my name is not really used anymore, so I think it is pretty cool. Story 55. I have always disliked it because it is boring and there are not really any nicknames. It is the name my mother wished she had been named, so I got stuck with it. My middle name is a family name, which was embarrassing growing up, but it does not bother me now. We live close to a town that has the same name, so people always have questions when they look at my identification. Story 56. I used to hate it in school because it was different and most of the time the teachers would butcher it. But now that I am older, I like it because it is different and pretty. Story 57. When I was little, I hated it, and no one in America had it. Once I was older, that was kind of cool. Now, because it was on a television show, it is very popular and I see it about 5 times a day. So people can pronounce it now. Basically, as an adult, I love it. Story 58. I'm not crazy about mine. It's a strong male name, but I never really identified with it. I've pretty much always had a nickname with my friends, and only my girlfriends throughout life have ever called me by my birth name. I think I would have liked being named Jack or Tom Moore. Story 59. It is so unique. People cannot pronounce it properly the first time. Whenever I introduce myself, they say, sorry, or mispronounce it. Story 60. Hate it. It is quite uncommon and can be pronounced in different ways depending on where you grew up. I was ridiculed for it quite a bit as a kid. Story 61. I hated it at first but have grown to like it. It's unique, and I know that whoever is saying it around me means they are talking to me or about me. My sons played youth baseball. During tournaments, you would get about 10 dugouts full of boys calling out, "Dad," for some Gatorade or seeds. At first, all dads would turn and look. Then, as they got older, no dads would turn because there were 150 kids, and we got tired of it not being our kid. So, my boys started yelling out my name, and I heard it every time. They are 19 and 24 now and still call me by my first name. Story 62. I do not like it. It is too common and I never thought it really fit me. I do not like my middle name either, if I am honest. And my name is not Tilly, for your information. Story 63. I hate it. Hardly anyone pronounces it correctly. No one knows how to write it. Every time in class, I could tell when a teacher was about to call my name because there was a big pause and strange looks. It is very uncommon. Only one other person has my name. If I could, I would have changed it. My name is not Jill, but due to privacy reasons, I will not tell you what it is. Story 64. I was named after 2 of my aunts. I used to be grateful they skipped Aunt Maxine, but now I would love to be called Max. Story 65. I like it except when one of my parents or my husband goes out of their way to say my full name. It makes me feel like I am a child and in trouble, even if I am not. Story 66. It was the 11th most popular name the year I was born, so at least nobody has trouble spelling it. Story 67. I hate it. It is an uncommon but not unique name. People mispronounce and misspell it. I have been asked about its origin or story, which is not very interesting. This happened more often when I was still a student. It is really annoying. Story 68. I like it. I just always have to spell it. It is Tiffany with an E. I am glad it is a normal mainstream name and not offensive like the names my cousins have. Story 69. I was adopted, and my parents named me Brian. I wish it were something more exotic since I am of Mayan descent. Story 70. I hate it. It was complicated and unusual as it is. Now, everywhere I go, I am asked to explain my origins, knowing that people will judge me for the actions of my country. No, it is not Adolf, that would be easier. If I say it to an English-speaking person, it sounds like the name of an animal. Story 71. I love it. It is unique, but not so unique that people do not know how to spell it. It was terrible when I was a kid because kids made fun of it all the time. But it is fine as an adult. I have only ever met one other person with my name, so no one else has it either. Story 72. I was teased about my first name endlessly into adulthood, so I legally changed it. Now, I don't even tell people what it used to be, only that it is a name frequently used in books and songs. My mother was really upset because I changed my middle name at the same time. She said my first and middle names honored strong, capable women in her family whom she respected. However, she dismissed my concerns every time I mentioned the teasing, much of which she had witnessed herself, especially from my brothers. To me, this strong, capable, and honorable name was a reason for constant abuse both inside and outside my home for over 20 years. I chose a gender-neutral name of a great uncle. The teasing immediately stopped. Story 73. Given that it means both handsome and intelligent, I am quite happy with it. As a bonus, my last name literally derives from Falcon Clan in our language. I think I am pretty lucky name-wise. Story 74. I like it, but it is admittedly common where I am from. I sometimes wish for a more unique name. It is good, though, and I appreciate my parents not going crazy while naming me because it makes life easy. Story 75. Mixed feelings. I like the name, but it peaked in popularity in the 1950s, then dropped significantly. It is not one of those classics that has come back in style. So it sounds old and makes me seem old. I mean, I am getting old, but not that old. Story 76. I would say it is quite rare, even in my own country. It is not like some names that have different versions depending on the country, such as Johann, John, Giovanni, and Ioannes. I like it, though. Story 77. I love it. I was named after my mother's favorite actor at the time. Also, it means gift of God. Story 78. I hate it. My parents used it as a weapon. They are dead and gone. And I still feel my heart still and sicken whenever I hear my name. Story 79. It's a good name. It was my grandfather's name, but I prefer to go by my middle name. Also, because my younger brother has the same first name, my older brother can use that Newhart joke about the brothers. Story 80. I have hated it for as long as I can remember, and I am horrified that it is popular again. I hear toddlers being called it at the park. Story 81. I have two first names. I am named after my dad and my uncle, with my dad's name coming first. When I started school, I wanted to be independent, so I introduced myself by the second half of my first name only. Hardly anyone knew I had two first names, and I used the single name all the way until I graduated college. However, once I started working, my employer, when setting up an email, would use either my full first name or just the first half of it. This created a lot of confusion because I would introduce myself using one name, but they would get an email from a different name and not realize it was me. I finally decided to go with the first half of my first name. Now, my family calls me by the second half of my first name, everyone else calls me by the first half, and my mom is the only person who uses both at the same time. Story 82. If I had known about the idea when I was young enough to make it stick, I would do like H. John Benjamin or C. Montgomery Burns, just call me by my middle. Story 83. As a child, I hated it. I was always picked on for it. Now I like it because it is unique, although many people mispronounce it. Story 84. I like my creeper name better. Approaching me in a bar? Hi, I am Sarah. I am Sarah all day long if I do not want to engage. Story 85. Makes me feel like I am forever 10 years old. It is not a baby name, but it also does not feel like an adult name. Story 86. As a small child, I cared a bit that my name was not unique. Hearing others having the same first name made me unhappy since I wanted to be special. As an adult, I could not care less. That is what nicknames are for, after all. Story 87. My parents chose to ignore my first name and use my second name in daily life. I am glad about it. I do not feel like an Abraham. Story 88. I don't really feel comfortable with it, but I can't really explain why. It's like I don't like the identity it has. Story 89. I had a project team led by Eagle with teammates named Peacock, Bear, Nyo, and Fox. We are professionals, of course. Story 90. I love my first name, but since I chose it myself, I would certainly hope that would be the case. I also chose my new middle name. Story 91. I do not really feel any particular way about it. My inner monologue refers to me by my middle name, as that is what I was called when growing up. Story 92. I never cared for it. My nickname is a shortened version of it that I do not really like either. I have always wanted to come up with a new nickname to go by, but the time never seemed right, and I am too old now to suddenly ask everyone to call me something different. Story 93. Odd. My family has, for generations, gone by our middle names. Sometimes I get called by my first name, and it takes a moment to realize they are calling for me. We mostly write our names with the initial, first name, and last name just so people get the idea, like R. Frank Smith. But occasionally, someone will ask what the R stands for and then start calling me that. Story 94. I was supposed to be named Juliana since there is a trend of J names in my family. My mom wanted to make me the odd one out and named me an A name. While I don't mind being the odd one out, Juliana is just so pretty. Story 95. It is a nice name but does not really fit me. My mother chose a kind of fancy name that is usually associated with pretty, elegant women, but I am a pretty basic-looking woman and never elegant. The name my father wanted was Savannah, and it would have fit me better. All is well. My mother won because my father loved her and always gave her whatever she wanted to make her happy. Story 96. I hated it as a kid and vowed to change once I was an adult. Eventually, I came to love it because it is an older name that you do not really hear anymore. Now, the only name change I have done is my last name when I got married. Story 97. As someone that really likes names, I find others having more unique names than mine, so mine just falls flat. Story 98. I thought it was boring, then I learned I was named after my mother's youngest sister. She is a strong, independent, and fascinating woman. Now I am proud of my name. Story 99. My first name is unusual and seems to be gaining popularity. When I get a quizzical look after saying my name, I just tell them my parents did drugs and not to ask. They usually laugh and move on. Story 100. It's all right. Better than my middle name. I got saddled with my father's middle name, which was his father's first name. I would have rather had my father's name as my middle name since no one under 60 has my middle name as their first name without changing it into a nickname. Story 101, short, to the point, biblical. It's all right overall. I just wish every one-syllable sound with the letter A in it would not sound like my name being shouted in the distance. The number of times I have turned to look at who is calling my name by mistake is astronomical. To me, it also feels like the name of someone who is attractive, and I am decidedly average. I feel like people must be disappointed the first time they meet me. Story 102. I love it now because it is not that common but familiar enough not to be mispronounced. However, I would have preferred Caroline with a long I. Story 103. I actually like my name, and no one I have encountered struggles to pronounce it. By the way, I know this must be obvious, but of course my real name is not Chaotic Captain. Story 104. I like both of my names. I was named after 2 hurricanes that occurred in the month my father was born. Since he was a boy, my grandmother could not use the names, so she saved them to be passed on to me. Story 105. I go by my middle name because I got tired of people mispronouncing, misspelling, and misremembering my first name. Additionally, I am part Cuban, and my first name can be pronounced in both English and Spanish. Story 106. I like it. It is very unique, but you have probably heard of it. It is just not a common name. No matter where I am, if I hear that name, I know they are talking to me. I have never worked with anyone or even been in the same social circle with anyone who has my name. There were some pop culture references that were a little annoying in my youth. However, it is older pop culture, so I have not heard anyone mention it in years. Story 107. Biblical, strong, and not overly used, but you can tell when I was born just by seeing it. Story 108. I hate mine. It is a shortened version of something else. I have talked with my mother about changing it to the longer version, and she said she does not mind, but it will cost money to do so. Story 109. Dennis. I knew a Dennis in elementary school. I knew a Dennis in middle school. I knew a Dennis in high school. A very common name. Story 110. I dislike my name because it is common, similar to names like Michael or Emily, and it has no connection to me or my family. The only reason I have this name is that I was born and raised in a different country from where my parents are originally from, so they gave me a name from that country. However, I do not like it because, once again, it has no connection to me or my family. I do have an ethnic name, but it is not my legal name. I wish my parents had named me my ethnic name instead of a common name. I am considering legally changing my name to my ethnic name in the future, but I am not sure yet because the legal process for changing a name is long and difficult. Story 111. Never liked it. It was fairly popular in the 1950s because of a movie star, but it is not so common now. I do not hate it, though. It is better than being named Dweezil or something. Story 112. I kind of want to change it. I wish it were cooler. But after hearing some people say it correctly, I realized I kind of like how it sounds now. Story 113. When I was a child, I hated it. But now I love it. It definitely reflects that I was born in the millennial generation. Story 114. I neither like nor hate it. I feel my parents could have been a bit more creative, but I also think it is a pretty nice name in terms of spelling and pronunciation. Story 115. I wish people would remember that it is my first name. Both my first and last names work as first names, but people constantly get them confused. Story 116. Saying it correctly is not hard at all and does not require hearing it. Just look at the letters and do not add extras. Story 117. Entirely too religious for my non-believer tastes, but I like it because I am almost always the only one in a given group. It is pretty rare for me to meet someone else with my name. Story 118. My first name is fine. However, I have been called by my middle name all my life. My cousin once told me that if I had used my first name instead of my middle name, I would have been popular and had more dates. I am not sure how true that would have been, but it is interesting to think about. Story 119. I hate it. It was a fad name and feels outdated. It is common enough that it is not unusual, but I feel like I cannot grow into my name. Story 120. My name is common but uncommon. If you hear it, you won't think twice about it, but I am probably the only person you know with this first name. I love my name. Story 121. I like it. It is not very common, but not unheard of. It is more popular in the southern region. You have to be careful writing it in all capital letters, though. It can become quite difficult to understand if you do not watch your spacing. Story 122. It was a popular name for girls in the 1960s and 1970s because of a movie. No one younger than 40 has this name. I never liked it, and my brother would rhyme it with other words to annoy me. Story 123. It's the most basic name in the world. I used to go by my middle name because all the other men in my family share it, but people still just call me by my first name. I'm not even really fond of my middle name because it is also a very basic white boy name, and I am not really that white. The two names together, though, are pretty cool. Story 124. I honestly do not mind it. I am slightly entertained by the fact that it is, I believe, Latin for a description that does not really fit me. Story 125. I like it. There were not many with my first name growing up, but it became more popular. It does cause problems abroad with mispronunciation, but I am fine with that. Story 126. I hate it. I was named after an uncle who killed his wife and received a life sentence in prison. I was named before the murder. Story 127. I have a very common first name. It is easy to spell and almost impossible to mispronounce if you are an English speaker. It is a cool name in my opinion, even with its ties to the Bible. Story 128. I honestly love my name, Alexandra. I don't use it very often, and most people use a shorter option, which I am more than okay with: Alex, Ollie, or Al. Story 129. Victor. After my great-grandfather. A bit of backstory. Born in the 1970s. Premature identical twin. Ultrasound was not available then. Identical twins have the same fetal heart tone, so it sounds like just one. My mother had no idea I was there. Buy one, get one free. My parents had to choose a name quickly. They did well. Story 130. If you look on Urban Dictionary for my first name, which is a common name from the Bible, people seem to have an overwhelmingly positive opinion. I like my common name. Story 131. It is not terrible, just not unique. It is a bit special because it was my grandmother's idea. But it is just a normal name like Lisa or Ashley. In recent years, people have been changing the spelling slightly, so I just clarify it automatically now. Story 132. I like it because it is my great-grandmother's name, but it is also an old alternative spelling of a common name. I have to spell it every time it matters, and people still manage to mess up the spelling. It is 4 letters. Think, Kate. But I am Kate. Story 133. I hate my first name. My father named me after himself but raised me by my middle name. My first name is not mine. I am going to have it changed before I die. My gravestone will not have his name. Story 134. It is a great name. The characters that make my name have a nice meaning too. People not from my country sometimes have a hard time pronouncing it, but it really is a rare occurrence, about 3 out of 10 people. Overall, it is a 10 out of 10 name. Story 135. There used to be only about 5 or 6 of us with my first name in the world. Now there are around 200. I find it interesting to have a unique name, but the problem is everyone else does too. Every single time, I hear, "Yes, I have an unusual name. Thank you for telling me it's cool. Can we move on?" I don't want to be rude, but I have had that conversation more times than I can count. Additionally, I have some trauma associated with hearing my first name out loud. I haven't used it to introduce myself since I turned 14, unless it was for a job or something legal. I go by my middle name, Scott. Simple, easy, and rather forgettable. Story 136. You would think that Anna is a fairly average simple name, right? Wrong. I have been called an Anya, Antya. It is ridiculous. That is why I keep my middle name for myself. I do not want to make things even more complicated. Aside from the occasional misinterpretation of my actual name, I am pretty happy with it. Story 137. It's fairly common, and because it's spelled differently, people often mispronounce it when reading. I like it. I think it's really pretty and it goes well with almost every last name. I would name my daughter after my name if my husband did not think it was strange. Story 138. I like my name. I like that it is biblical. I like that it can be written out fully or shortened to a casual nickname. Story 139. It's fine. It was popular in the late 1980s, but I was born in the mid-1990s and it had mostly fallen off by then. My sister, born in 1988, had many friends with the same name, and there was a very popular actress with that name, so I heard endless jokes about her. I did not meet another person my age with the same name until college, and she is still the only one I know 10 years later. An interesting story. I went through a phase in high school when I wished my name was a different but somewhat similar name because, in my opinion at the time, it was a prettier and more striking name. Then later, my mom told me that she had wanted to name me that similar name, but my dad told her that my aunt had had a miscarriage several years before, pretty late into the pregnancy, and that was the name they had chosen for the baby. This came up because my mom had been talking to my aunt. My mom had never mentioned it to my aunt before, for obvious reasons. My aunt told my mom that she should have talked to her about it after my dad told her, because they would have loved if they had given me the same name. I think the coincidence that I loved that name, having never heard that story before, only to later find out it was intended to be my name, is really strange and neat. In summary, it's fine, a bit outdated by the time I was born, almost given a different name that I liked more. I will say the first name I ended up with goes better with my middle name, which was from one of my mom's great-grandmothers and is a little old-fashioned, than the original name would have. Story 140. I would have had a better name, but my siblings suggested my current name. The scrapped name was Desiree Phoenix. Story 141. It is a common name with a unique spelling. Nothing too crazy, people can still pronounce it when they look at it. I was almost named Crystal, so what I ended up with was definitely a step up. No offense to any of the Crystals out there. Overall, I would say I feel indifferent about it. It just is what it is. Story 142. I never liked it. No one spells it correctly, and it was always mispronounced when I was growing up. I took a nickname and never looked back. Thank you, Mom. Story 143. I love my name. It is not weird, but it is not very common either. For example, throughout school, there was only one other person with the same name as me at the same time. I am not revealing personal information, but I was named after a supermodel. Story 144. I liked my name okay, and it was pretty uncommon. Then a series of books and movies about sparkly vampires came along with a familiarly named hunky love interest. About 5 years after that, I was constantly startled by mothers scolding, hissing, or shouting my name in grocery stores, only to turn and see them looking at their kids. This took a while to adjust to, and I am still not completely over it. Story 145. Hate it. It's visually simple, just one letter changed from a very common name, but everyone mispronounces or misgenders it. It basically guarantees that the first minute of any new interaction will be spent awkwardly explaining my name. It is even worse on the phone, to the point I have severe phone anxiety because of how much of a hassle it is to explain. Give your kids simple, easy-to-pronounce names. Story 146. I cannot complain. There were always 4 to 6 of us while I was growing up, but I rarely meet anyone with my name anymore. Story 147. I wish people would spell it correctly, especially those who have it written out in front of them, such as in an email. Story 148. Pretty good, since I picked it. My parents named me something I felt was not a good name and did not fit me at all. It was a borderline tragedy, so I changed it legally. I don't regret it. Story 149. It is not the name on my original birth certificate. My father changed it after he decided to return to our lives for a couple of years. It is kind of weird, but I got over it and ended up using it for my son. Story 150. I like it. Common, traditional spelling. I just can never seem to find it on anything because it is always gone. Story 151. I have never been called by my first name since it is predominantly a girl's name. When I was in elementary school, I dreaded the first day of school when they did roll call. I would say here when my name was called, and then the whole class would turn their heads my way in confusion. Story 152. I hate it. I avoid telling people my name because it does not make sense. It is a mispronounced name from another culture. It sounds more like a noise people make out of disgust than a name. Story 153. My parents got slightly creative in spelling. My name is spelled phonetically Kelsey. I always get Kelsia or Chelsea. It is incredibly frustrating. Story 154. It is a common name, but I do not like it shortened typically. There are times I am fine with it being shortened, such as when there is another coworker who has been there longer with the same name or a similar situation. However, I have had people try to call me by that nickname in one-on-one situations and continue to use it after being corrected, which tends to annoy me. Story 155. Honestly, I have never felt like my name fit me or my personality. It was a name my parents thought would help me blend into American culture, since it was the name of the day when they immigrated. But it is dated, and the stereotypes around it are popular girl and cheerleader. These are things people in my own age group have said about my name, expressing surprise that I am the opposite. Story 156. I like it, but I share both my name and birthday with an evil person whom I will not name for my own online safety. Story 157. Started off hating it for being so different. By the time I was in my teens, I was happy that it was different. Story 158. I do not hate my name, but I have heard every cheesy line and every song with my name as the title when I introduced myself to people. I have also been asked numerous times if it is my real name or a nickname. Story 159. It is unfortunate, and I grew up with 4 friends who had it as well. We were all different variations of it, or in my case, went by our last name. Story 160. My parents named me Sebastian, as my dad is French. But nobody here in the Netherlands can pronounce it correctly. So all my life it has been shortened to Ba, which is the common Dutch abbreviation for all variations of Sebastian. There is an old children's show about a clown and an acrobat called Bassie en Adriaan that was very popular when I was young. I had to endure basically everyone I met as a kid joking about my name, singing the theme song of the show, or asking me where Adriaan was. I wish they had picked another name, to be honest. I was always a bit of an outsider for unrelated reasons, and having a very common name with nothing special about it on top of that always felt a little off somehow. Story 161. It's fine. I go by a shortened version of my name, and my family gives my nickname a nickname like Catherine, Katie, Kate. I feel pretty removed from my full name. I don't actually respond to it. It is pretty enough. I might actually like it more than the shortened version, but it does not feel like it belongs to me. Story 162. Just a basic popular 1980s and 1990s girl's name. The nickname is casual and the full name is more professional, so it works, I guess. Story 163. I'm Remington. I like it because it is rare but simple. I go by Remy, and I was ecstatic when Ratatouille came out. I could finally get a souvenir with my name on it at Disney. Story 164. I do not use it. Very few people know about it. I was named after a Confederate general, although he was an abolitionist. Story 165. I feel like my parents chose my name from the top 10 boys' names list for the year I was born. It is both boring and common. There is almost always another person with the same first name as me. At work, there are about 120 people and 5 of us share the same name. Story 166. It is too long. My full name is too long. My mother intentionally gave me long first and middle names, which is, I suppose, better than having a commonly misspelled name. Story 167. I am almost never correctly called by my first name. Usually, it is a variation or a combination of my name and something else. More often than not, they only get the first letter right and then fail miserably at the rest. Other than that, I like it. It is uncommon, so people usually can identify me. Story 168. People always call me Vanessa or Victoria. I know other Veronicas can relate, and I hate it. Other than that, it's fine. Story 169. For the longest time, mainly from childhood to about age 18, I totally hated it. Over the years, I have become comfortable with it. I am 65 years old, and my name is Claudia. Story 170. I used to love it. It is easily pronounced, recognizable, feminine, and my childhood nickname was Care Bear. Now, I have legitimately contemplated changing it because the internet has ruined it. Twice, someone has apologized to me when I introduced myself. It is so depressing. No one says nice things about it anymore. Please give the Karens of the world back their name. Story 171. I have gone by my middle name my entire life. It feels strange to be called by my first name. I don't mind it, but it feels odd. Story 172. I love my first name. It has 5 letters. I dislike when people shorten it to 3 letters. I call them out on it immediately. Story 173. I think my name is great. There was a time when I didn't think so because children can be cruel. Now they can leave me alone. Story 174. Love it as long as you do not use the other version of my name. Honestly, I wish my parents had called me by my middle name. Story 175. I like my name. It ends the same as a very popular name, but with a different beginning. I have never met anyone else with my name, but surprisingly Starbucks spells it correctly every time. My only issue is that my name is at the end of a well-known American city, so a lot of people assume my name is actually a nickname and that I am named after the city. In reality, I am named after my great-grandmother, who was also not named after the city. Story 176. My mother wanted to name me Max Eugene after her father who had recently passed away, 12 hours before I was born. My father said he thought his father would be jealous if I was named after her dad, so they chose a name at random from a book of baby names. It ended up being the most common name for boys that year. My fraternal grandfather did not care what my name was because he already had someone named after him, my father. I could have been Max Eugene. Story 177. I kind of liked it. It is a Spanish-Italian name. It is also the name of a place in a commune in southern Italy where a saint lived. Its pronunciation changes depending on the spelling, and people would pronounce it the way they pronounce the common variation. My name was spelled the less common way. It is also very common in Spanish-speaking countries. Story 178. It is very Catholic-coded, and I am an atheist. People get the wrong impression about me all the time. Kind of funny though. Story 179. Hate it. I am named after a television character. I would have rather been named after the actor and not the character. I was already different, and growing up I only met one other person with my name. I wanted to fit in and not stand out any more than I already did. I still hate it. Story 180. My name is Nyxarian, Latin and Greek for dark angel or mountain demon, if you are feeling dramatic. I like it. Story 181. Love it. My dad named me after his best friend who was killed on September 11th. Nobody can pronounce it correctly, even though it is seriously phonetic. My last name is even worse. Imagine an Eastern European or Hebrew first name mixed with an Irish last name. The last name is definitely more difficult to pronounce than the first name. I would not change it for the world, however. Story 182. It's cute and unique. I have never seen another person with it. At the same time, I wish I could get those magnet souvenirs that have your name on them. Story 183. I love it. I am Brazilian, but my name is French. It is a very common name in Brazil. When I lived in Paris, I had to change it to my second name because the French pronunciation of my name sounded strange to me. Story 184. I love it. I am named after a bug. And it is really fun. People use my name as a pun all the time, and it is great. Story 185. When I lived up to my name, life rewarded me generously. The meaning of my name is an origin of goodness. Story 186. Very generic. I have multiple friends with the same name. I am happy it is not incredibly strange or difficult to say, but it is very common. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.